That's what they used to call me in St. Louis. I think it's followed me here to the network. Yeah, we'll use that every once in a while. In a moment, an interview, something I've been looking forward to for a long time, ever since I heard him with Art Bell. John Lear, our guest. So get ready on Coast to Coast AM. John Lear is a retired airline captain, former CIA pilot, as well as the son of the famous inventor of the Lear jet. He is a Lockheed L-1011 captain and is highly regarded in aviation circles. He has flown more than 150 test aircraft and has won every award granted by the Federal Aviation Administration. John also holds 18 world speed records and has worked for 28 different aircraft corporations. And during the late 1980s, into the early 1990s, John began coming forward with startling revelations concerning the subject of aerial phenomena and unidentified flying objects. He is our special guest tonight on Coast to Coast. John, my pleasure. How are you?
George, it's an honor and a pleasure to be on the show with you, and I'm great.
The disclosure briefing that I just heard that I played, is that based on things that are or things that could be?
Most of that was real. In fact, all of it was real. There was if I had to make a change, I'd make the change, which isn't important, about why they killed Kennedy. There were so many reasons they killed Kennedy, but one of the main thing, the reason they killed Kennedy, he was insisting on inspections of Dimona, which was Israel's nuclear manufacturing plant, and they couldn't have that, and so Mossad, in conjunction with several guys at CIA, one of which was, I'm trying to think of his name. Anyway, they got together and they planned that thing and eliminated Kennedy. Now, there's a few things that they left out in that briefing for Art. And one of them was that EBE-3, who was captured in 1953, who they named J-Rod, helped them build their own flying saucers, the United States government.
Is that the one that Dan Bursch person is talking about?
I've seen those tapes, and at first I thought that Dan Bursch stuff was not real until I saw the videotapes of him, and I said, yes, that's real. He was there. I know the protocol, and he was there, and the stuff that he says is real. And later in the program, I'll tell you some of the stuff that he is going to be talking about is not, it's disinformation, but basically that's not his fault. By 1962, we had vehicles, while they could not perform the faster-than-light speed of the alien vehicles, we could certainly get them to the moon in about an hour. Regular trips to Mars, we were making regular trips to Mars in 1966. Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo were all cover missions, and most of the astronauts knew it. And on January 27, 1967, a fire in Apollo 1 atop the spacecraft, I think it was Pad 39A, killed Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, and one other astronaut. But this fourth astronaut was not one that we knew. The fourth guy was one of the secret astronaut corps that was formed along with the astronaut corps that we knew about. The difference being that the astronauts in the secret corps were going to the moon in 1962 while the public was watching the Mercury astronauts circle the globe.
Oh, really?
And after constructing various buildings and mining facilities by 1966, we landed on Mars. And since then, we have explored most of the planets in our solar system and found life similar to us on all of them. Now, one interesting thing, George, remember Mars rover a few years ago had the dust settle on the solar panels, and it couldn't recharge its battery.
Right, it looked like it was going to die. Yeah,
and then all of a sudden, it was the dust was gone, and the batteries recharged, and everything was normal.
Right, and they blamed some kind of wind, a dust devil that knocked it off or something.
Well, what really happened was that was our secret astronaut corps up there with paper towels and Windex.
John. You believe that one?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the guy that told me that, who is not living anymore, when I had expressed disbelief in some of the stuff, or not expressed disbelief, I said, are you sure this is true? And he told the Mars rover story. He said, yeah, that's who went up and cleaned it.
All right, here, let me ask you this, John, and we're going to get into a lot of interesting things with you tonight, and you've got credentials all the way down your arm, and I want everybody to understand that, because I'm going to ask you some specifics of your life. I want them to understand who you are, who we're talking to tonight. Why would they even need rovers there if we had astronauts already on the planet?
It's part of the cover-up. Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, the space shuttle, it's all to keep our eye on that while the other stuff is going on.
A huge, bigger picture, no doubt.
Huge, bigger picture.
All right, let's talk a little bit about John Lear. Of course, the son of the famous inventor of the Lear jet. I don't know if anybody's ever asked you, John, about your father and how he even came about inventing this jet. That I'd like to know.
Well, in 1930, he formed what was known as Lear Incorporated, and he built millions and millions of dollars of equipment for the armed services. They were in the form of actuators, screw jacks, fuel pumps, all kinds of stuff. And in 1956, he wanted to improve an airplane, which was a Lockheed Lodestar. And he took the Lockheed Lodestar, put more powerful engines on it, cleaned up the wings, retracted the tail wheel, did a lot of other things, and it became known as the Lear Star. They sold 62 of those airplanes as executive airplanes. But the program was not successful. There were several major accidents, one of which killed Mike Todd over there in Grants, New Mexico, and one which killed the entire board of Johnson & Johnson Company, and it was not successful. In 1958, he wanted to design a brand new airplane, and oddly enough, the new airplane was going to be a pusher-type airplane, but it developed into the Learjet, and at that time, they say that he was the first. He wasn't the first. They had the Saberliner and the Jetstar, the North American Saberliner and the Lockheed Jetstar, and he came along and he started building the Learjet. He went to his board of directors, and they said, "No, Bill, we're not going to go along with this. It's not going to go, and you're not going to spend our money." So he sold his stock in Lear Incorporated to Siegler Corporation. It became known as Lear Siegler, and he took that money, $7 million, and started what was known as the Swiss American Aviation Corporation in Geneva, Switzerland. The reason he moved to Geneva, he thought there was availability of engineering talent, availability of raw stockpile materials, and that he could get the airplane built there. But after a disastrous 3 years, in 1963, he moved to Wichita, Kansas, built a plant there, and continued the design and production of the Learjet there.
The rest history. Did he ever know Howard Hughes? I would bet Hughes would have been all over him to get those jets.
No, he knew Howard Hughes. They had a big beef, and it's my understanding that the problem started with Howard borrowed an airplane from Dad and left it somewhere out of gas and never told him where it was. And forever after, they were not so much enemies, but didn't talk to each other.
All right, tell me a little bit about John Lear. I mean, because you grew up then in the aviation industry, and it obviously had a lot to do with the direction that you took.
Well, I grew up in Santa Monica, California, went to Santa Monica High, used to spend all my time out at the Santa Monica Airport. It just irritated my dad to no end because he didn't like pilots, oddly enough. He was a pilot himself.
That is interesting.
But he didn't like pilots, and he didn't like me getting into aviation, although he did provide the airplanes. There was a Bonanza and an Aero Commander out there, and I used to fly them around, got my private, then my commercial, then my instrument, and I used to hang around at Santa Monica Tower and work the B position and then A position, just as a kid in high school. And it was a lot of fun, and that's all I wanted to do. As a matter of fact, in 1960, after I graduated from high school, I was in his office there that was on 3171 South Bundy, and he called in the plant psychiatrist, and the guy's name was Platt.